Unit 3. Skills Test. Listening. You are going to listen to a student called Liam talking to his class about an activist called Wangari Maathai. Complete the sentences with a word or short phrase.
For my project about inspirational people, I researched a Kenyan woman called Wangari Maathai. I didn't know anything about her until I came across her on the internet, but as I read more about her, I realised what an amazing person she was. She started up an important environmental movement which has improved the lives of thousands of people. To give you some background information, Wangari was born in a part of Kenya called Nyeri. At the age of 3, she moved to an area called the Rift Valley, where her father had got a job on a farm. In an interview, Wangari explained how she had good memories of her time living there. She said that the area was really green and there were lots of roaring rivers with clean, fresh water. She also explained how it had changed over the years, and it was quite shocking, really. Basically, the farms got bigger and they put more pressure on the local environment. More and more trees were cut down and new crops like wheat were introduced. This had a huge impact because the lack of trees meant that the land became very dry. The water couldn't move around properly, and the streams and rivers dried up. Of course, this happened over many years. In that time, Wangari grew up and eventually went to study for a biology degree in the USA. She was one of a few hundred students from that part of Africa chosen to participate in a special study program. While she was there, a project to get rid of environmental pollution in the city caught her attention. However, she returned to Kenya, where she continued her studies at the University of Nairobi. In 1971, she became the first East African woman to be awarded a PhD. That's the highest university degree you can get, and pretty impressive if you ask me. While Wangari was working at the university, she started to think about how things had changed in Kenya. She had noticed that development was actually making things worse for some people. People were becoming poorer, and they seemed to have less control of their everyday existence. She heard Kenyan women complaining about problems with food and resources. They were finding it harder to get food and wood, which they used for making fires and building houses and fences. They also talked about how the streams were drying up, so less water was available. Wangari thought that some of Kenya's leaders were not taking responsibility for these problems, so she set up an organisation called the Green Belt Movement. The group tried to show people how to manage their natural resources by planting more trees and looking after their water supply. The Green Belt Movement worked closely with women's groups, and, over the years, they have planted millions of trees throughout Kenya. They have worked with companies, schools, and even the Kenyan army. Although Wangari's organisation had helped many poorer Kenyans, she also managed to upset some people, especially some of the politicians. For example, in the 1980s, she protested about plans to build a huge skyscraper in a public park in Nairobi. Wangari wrote letters to the government and to foreign businesses involved in the project. The government was really annoyed with her, and some of them said she was crazy. When construction workers arrived at the site, it looked likely that the skyscraper would be built. However, Wangari kept protesting and finally succeeded in convincing them to stop the project. For the next 15 years, Wangari kept working with the Green Belt Movement, as well as many other organisations that helped people and the environment. She also continued to bother the government with her protests, and she was arrested several times. However, she was rewarded for her efforts. In 2004, she became the first female African to win the Nobel Peace Prize. She received it because of her efforts over many years to improve the environment and defend human rights. In her speech when she got the award, Wangari said that she wanted to inspire people to take responsibility for the environment and also for their own lives. Sadly, Wangari died in 2011, but the Green Belt Movement carries on.